Today we have with us Joe Pane. He is expert in human behavior and the author of Courage to Be You. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks, Carms. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, look, this is really cool because in my community, we've got a bunch of aspiring coaches and authors, and you're many steps ahead. So I think when it comes to courage, and I'm sure you'll tell me a lot more about this, is that they are battling this like uncertainty. How do I get out of this thing? But I think they need to get specific and some clarity around these things that they hear. They're like, okay, yes, I go to these motivational courses, programs. Their motivation gets shot up, right? And then in a few days, it's like it wears off. So they don't have, then they're like, okay, but how do I do this? I've got courage, sure. I'll reach out to people, I'll connect to people. And they'll see someone like me that's taking some steps, not as many steps of where you are at right now. And they'll be like, okay, how do I do that? So I'm a little bit closer to them, right? And so I'll tell them things like, you literally just gotta get out there and people will start knocking on your door. Or you can reach out. You can directly reach out and people will say yes to you. And I think there's this uncertainty of like, but really? Right? And this happened exactly for us, right? I sent you a message and you said yes. What got you to say yes?
Well, nothing specific. It's like, for me, I've always believed in a philosophy of saying yes and working out how. So anyone who approaches me for a conversation, obviously I had a quick look at you online just to make sure that you're not a scam or a made-up character that God knows who this person is. So yeah, so that was as thorough as it got, really. And
Yeah.
but I appreciate anyone who says yes to life, yes to opportunity, yes to whatever they want to create. I think at the end of the day, the essence of our psychology works when it's aligned to the way that nature functions. And something that we need to be aware of with nature is that nature only, the only reason why nature is alive, and I'm simplifying a very complex system here, but nature is alive because it moves, and that's nature's way of saying, well, that's action. So without movement, you have physical death. Physicality, which includes our psychology and our energy, is reliant on movement. So, and something that kept me going in the early years was becoming aware of any form of progress I could see on a weekly basis or a monthly basis or sometimes on a daily basis. That progress being whether it's relationship building, whether it's confidence building, whether it's impact, whether it's the skill progressing. As long as it's progress, that's what matters a lot. Combined, and that progress can only happen when you take action, when you're actually in movement.
I agree with you. And I think people would be still thinking, what do you mean by the physical death, or why do we have to create that movement? Because so many people is kind of comfortable and go, well, kind of life is good. Why do I have to move?
Well, if life is good, rock on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
because what you'll find is that life is good. I can say the same thing. Life is good, and it is. That's coupled though with the facts that living on Earth, everything's either green and growing or ripe and rotting, as Ray Kroc said all those years ago. Everything's either breathing out or breathing in, expanding or shrinking. It's growing or dying. Nothing stays still in this game called life. And to be at a place where life is good, that is great, but it's like sitting on a precipice where it's going to go down this side or this side, depending on your steps. So, and depending on what you focus on. So, everything, if we stay still for too long, whatever it is, whether it's a skill set, whether it's in a relationship, in a marriage, whether it's physical health, if we stay still for too long, that very thing that is good starts to become not good. So
Mhm.
there's always got to be some element of movement. Life is a dance. That's the physical environment that we live in.
I love that. Life is a dance. So when you went on this journey, Joe, like this coaching journey, or I think you do a lot of corporate work, right? Where you go in and talk to them. I think I even saw one of the company I've worked for in there, NBN.
Which one? NBN? Did you work for
NBN.
NBN?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I did a fair bit of work with NBN for a few years or a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah. How did that come about? Tell us about that journey for you? Like, how did you go from, getting the degree, and then when did the coaching begin? Did you start working first, or did you kind of just launched into coaching? How did that come about? And then how did your journey go? Okay, now I can talk in different companies.
Yeah, great question. So, so to answer that question, to make it make sense, I'll just give you a bit of a backdrop. So, in my book, I talk about the importance of the journey of ambition to meaning. So, which is a fancy way of saying that we're all on a journey to find deeper meaning, to find meaningful ways to contribute, to discover ways to live our lives where we feel like we're having some kind of impact, some kind of effect, some kind of contribution. And the ambition to meaning journey is all about that. And it's about integrating actually ambition into meaning. So to translate that, it's like finding a way of making money in a meaningful way, which means making money in a way that is completely aligned to the values that you hold today. So what I found was I was working in the ambition-driven world of sales in real estate many, many years ago. And I loved it, did it for 7 years. 5 of those 7 years were fantastic. The last 2 years I became disengaged and my priorities were shifting, and what took my attention was changing, and what used to excite me stopped exciting me. And so the motivations were changing, the inspirations were changing, everything was changing, and I didn't know what was going on. And so I took some time off. I took about 15 months off, and I went on a sabbatical, which I didn't even know I was on. I just took some time off, and I went and did vision quests, silent retreats, residential weekends. I did lots of spiritual, meditational, conscious altering, no drugs, conscious altering, exercise, breath work. It was phenomenal for 15 months. And that really put me deep into the meaning-driven world. But I didn't know how to connect the ambition and meaning together. So I was running out of money, and I went back to my old job in sales after 15 months off, and I couldn't belong there. It's like trying to put the toothpaste back into the bottle. You just can't do it. And I was a values mismatch. And so I was having lunch one day, and I saw this advertisement in the magazine that literally the headline said, it was something like this, how to create your personal development, how to have a personal development business or something like that. So, and I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. And so I went to an information night. It was all about coaching and life coaching and what it is and what it's not and how it works and all this sort of thing. And I signed up to this program, which was really, really solid. And I went to the bank. I borrowed $30,000, which at the time, $30,000, which at the time this was in 2005, 2006, something like that, 2005. And it was enough to keep me going for 6 months at least. And at the time, my wife and I never had kids, and our outgoings were nowhere near as high as they are today. And so I then...
so the 30 grand wasn't just for the program. This was to sustain your journey.
No, it was to sustain. Yeah. I went on a payment plan with the program, and it was just to pay for basic things, mortgage, right. Whatever. And also pay for memberships and networking events and different things that I'd have to, buy and invest in for my business. So I started. And the thing is, I was in a place where wherever I had come from, I didn't want to go back there. And I'm not talking about the sabbatical stuff. I'm talking about the old job. Before sales, I worked as a rehab counselor at Ford Motor Company because I've got a psychology, sociology background. So when I finished that degree, I've worked at Ford, then I did sales, and I started my business. And I didn't want to go back to where I'd come from. I just didn't belong there anymore. So for me, it was like, and I loved like pretty much everyone. I know it's a strong statement when I say everyone, but pretty much everyone wants to be free. You know, free of the hamster wheel, free of the 9 till 5 or the 7 till 7 or the, you know, working for someone or being told what to do every day. So, you know, these were strong motivations. So I had some good mentors around me. The definition of a good mentor is someone who already has the results that you're wanting. So if you're wanting to make 50 grand in your first year or 100 grand in your first year, you know, your mentor has to be making at least that, if not double or triple that, for them to mentor you. And I had mentors like that around me, and I did as I was told. I know that sounds really however it sounds. And I progressively realized my dream. Now, the first 2, 3, I reckon even the first 5 years, there were multiple days where I wanted to quit. And the way that I kept going was, I said to myself, okay, quit. What are you going to do? I remember the first time I went through this exercise in my mind, it was like a thought experiment. It's like, oh, I'll go and buy a cafe and sell coffee. It's like, sure, go and do that and see how easy it is. It's actually very difficult.
Yeah.
And labor intensive and stressful and volume based. And anyway, so, and I didn't.
Was that an imaginary thing, or you actually played this out?
Sorry?
Was that an imaginary thing, or did you actually play this out?
No, it was imaginary. It was all in my mind.
Okay,
it was a thought experiment. Yeah, so I thought that's not going to work. And where else are you going to work? Where are you going to go? So in the meantime, whilst this was going on in my mind, I'd have appointments in my diary that I'd have to attend to. And one of the things that my mentor said to me back then, or one of my mentors said to me back then, is never, ever, 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 ever cancel an appointment because you don't feel like it, right? With a client, because they've had the courage to rock up. So you've got to rock up too. So I'd have an appointment. So then I'd have a session with this particular person, because back then when I first started, I did a lot of one-on-one work. And then we'd have a great session. And I would be reminded of why I'm doing this. It's the meaning-driven ambition, right?
Yes.
Making money in a meaningful way. So I love that. And then some days I might be busier than other days where I'd have multiple appointments, and that would see me through my day. And then I'd get to dinner time and I'd go, gee, that was a great day, you know? And then I'd forget about quitting.
Yeah.
And then I started doing little talks and workshops for different groups. And I remember doing a talk at this, I don't even know if they even exist. They're called the Young Insurers Group. I don't think they exist anymore, but I did a presentation there for about half an hour or something. And I remember,
how did that come about? Did you knock on everyone's door? Did you send a bunch of LinkedIn?
I can't remember. I can tell you how, in essence, the way it came, all opportunities came because I invested very strongly in my time. For the first 2.5 years, I did networking events every week, you know, at least one, maybe 2, maybe 3. And some of them were really awful, and many of them were great, because I'd just walk into a room and, you know, I had no rules around this. It was like whoever I kind of land on with my eyes, if they connect with me, I'll go and say hello and we'll just have a chat and, you know, whatever. So I just did that. I did that over and over and over and over.
I like it how you said I just did that. It's like, you don't realize how difficult that is. It's like, guys, I hope you picked that up, that you go to networking event regularly. That's like every week.
Yeah, multiple times a week.
Not like once a month or maybe when I feel like it. It's like, no, there's work. That's the part where there's work involved. You don't know what those connections will lead to.
That's right,
Once you've gone out.
That's right, exactly. And, you know, because of many of the connections I'd created over those years, you know, your network expands. It's like a branch of a branch of a branch. You've got all these multiple, and the next thing you know, you've got this complex web of different branches hanging off the main branch, if that makes sense. So, so that's what it was.
And people start vouching for you.
Yeah. Well, then see, what happened was, because of my activity, the consistent activity, you know, I got the attention of someone who ran, back then, a very successful coaching school, and they approached me to see if I would run one of their trainings, which I just ran. You know, I ran 1 hour of it, 1 hour, and then that 1 hour became, you know, 2 hours, and then that became 3/4 of a day. And then I ended up, this 3-day training was what I ended up doing for this school. And I had them as a client. The school was my client for 12, 13, 14 years. And
Whoa.
that, in alignment with all the other things I was doing, was how I built my network. And so now I've trained over 7,000 coaches and thousands of others outside of that space, and created my own accreditation program in emotional fitness for coaches. And but look, to answer your question, Carms, it's just consistency of action, consistency of movement. And the other tip here is a strong tip, and that is that, don't judge your actions. In other words, you go to a networking event and it sucks, and you met a couple of people that you didn't like, and you come home, and you don't judge yourself on that, or don't judge anything, not even the people on that. That's how it was. Other events you go to, you meet the right people, you meet 2 right people, and it makes a massive difference to your month or to your quarter, So, and these days, of course, which is different to 06, because 2005, 2006, when I started, the internet obviously was in existence, but it was in its early stages still, and lead generating and virtual events were non-existent, and now you've got all these options. So, I think
Do you
it's
think
just
that's better or worse? Like, because I agree with you, that stuff wasn't really there before. So if anyone ran it earlier, they were the one, they would be like, authority would be like super high, right? But now it's like everyone's running challenges, everyone's got programs out there, so many things out there. If you were to do it all again now, what would you advise people to break through in the market?
Well, I think it's really important that you get educated or hire a digital marketer who is genuinely brilliant at what they do. And there's a lot of digital marketers around. So like everything, there's people who are brilliant and people who are not so good. So I think that's really all, get yourself educated there. I also think you should become, so that's one thing. I think the second thing is, and this is in no particular order, second thing is you've got to become a member of a tribe somewhere, a community, whether that community is a coaching community. I think multiple communities. I think you should be part of a community of where you're learning more about your craft, right? I think you should become a member of a community that's got nothing to do with your craft. So a professional business networking event of some kind, whatever it might be. And I think you should also have a hobby of some kind that sings to your soul, that makes your soul swirl, that you can do multiple times a week, that grounds you and keeps you focused. And I think if you have those in play, that's a very good base, a very good start. That's, I would have started, that's kind of like how I started, minus the digital marketing back in 07, because digital marketing didn't exist. So, but that's how I would start. And consistency, if I was to give myself any feedback to stretch myself, is I could be more consistent online. Sure. But if I was starting, you've got no choice. You've got to be consistent, and not just consistent, but you want to be providing some genuine value. You don't want to be just getting in front of a camera and just talking for the sake of talking.
Yeah. When I hear your journey, Joe, I wonder if like people that follows this like mission kind of go through a very similar journey, because I did kind of like what you did, where I was working, and then I took a break for like 2 years and did all of that kind of stuff as well. That discovering journey, like you just couldn't go back. There's no way you're going to go back. Like you exited already. I think the only difference there was that because I had a accounting background, I was really big on finance. So for me to get, I was really torn on this thing. So maybe you would take a leap. I think you would have took a leap earlier than me. It took me 15 years to take that leap. And that's because I had to build up that finance base, because I would never take the loan path like you. I probably just the way I was grown up, and I need that certainty.
Sure.
So I'm like, no, I need the money first. I think for someone to do it, when I think of someone to do that journey now, I think they can go in between. But what do you think? Do you think it's someone, if they are still doing their job now, can they do it on the side? Or do you feel like, nah, they've got to somehow plunge in all the way, like all in?
Yeah, it's a complex question, Carmen, because everyone's circumstances and life situation is different. But I think, you know, there was a oh God, I can't remember the name of the guy, but there was a fellow, I read this somewhere, somehow, I can't even remember where it came from. The power of impact hours. So this is where if you're working a job and you're looking to transit from that into having your own consultancy practice, I think whilst you're working in that job, you've got to dedicate some impact hours toward moving into that new area. So let me explain what that means and how it works. So there was a story of this is a true story, of a lawyer who was working 60 hours a week, married, 2 young kids, with a third on the way, or it might have been one young kid with another one coming, something like that. It's a busy family life. He was at court one day and was profoundly moved by this particular person who was giving their account of what had happened to them in this particular case. And this was a profound day for him, because he was somehow moved to write a novel that replicates this story that he witnessed on the witness stand. He had never written a book in his life. He had never thought about novel writing. He never thought about that at all. But he was inspired to do that. But he had every excuse in the world not to do it. 60 hours a week working, stressed, high pressure job, come home, young kids, wife, family, obligations, responsibilities. But what he did was he applied the theory of impact hours. So he would get up at, I'll say 5 a.m. It might have been 4 a.m. I don't know exactly. He would get up in the morning or go to his office at 5:30 instead of 8:30 and dedicate 3 hours, 3 impact hours toward his novel writing. And he did that, I'll say for 2 years. I don't exactly, it's around that. Might be 3 years. And he produced a manuscript for this novel. And he then went on a journey to present this manuscript to various publishers. Went through about 5 or 6, got rejected, as the story goes, and eventually he got accepted by this publisher, got this book published. Didn't really sell many copies, nothing really happened. He loved the writing process. He went back and wrote another novel around a similar sort of topic, around these legal issues that he's an expert in, and produced a second novel. And that second novel was a hit, ended up becoming a movie. The novel ended up cracking the top 10 of the New York Times bestsellers. And then because of that the second novel, the first novel got popularity and got popularity there. I'm just trying to remember the name of the famous author here. Oh my God, it's around the corner in my library. I can pop out and just go and get it. But he's a very famous author whose name escapes me right now. It'll come to me.
If it doesn't, we'll put it in the comment later.
if you can bear with me, I can go around that corner there and find out, because my library's around the corner there. So, but anyway, he ended up becoming a famous author who's now, 20 years later, sold in excess of 45 million novels. 45 million. He's one of the most. He's like a Stephen King. He's up there with Stephen King. He's one of those dudes. Now, this all began because he was in a very similar circumstance to many of the coaches that you and I are talking about, who have got a full-time life dedicated with family, financial obligations, hours, jobs, but the man found a way. And so the impact hours means, in the case of this particular fellow, 3 hours unconditionally, cleanly dedicated to the mission of writing the book. 3 hours. And then at 8:30, his day would start as a lawyer.
Like 3 years, for like a couple of years, right? Like,
so what I'm saying is, you know, where if you really want to, you can, you know.
You can do it. Impact hours, Joe. Did you apply that in writing your book? Because you've got something similar going, right? Like coaching, like out there, whether it's with people, with companies, and then you've got your father of 2, I think. Is it father of 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're married, and well, I think you do some marathon on the side as well. So you've got a lot of things going on. So where did you find the time for your book? Impact hours?
Yeah. I did a minimum of 1 hour impact. So I did an impact hour, and sometimes it'd be 90 minutes, but 60 minutes minimum, dedicated to writing it. And that's a 3-year project right there, a 3-year project.
3-year project.
Yeah, but the impact hour dedication was specifically over the last sort of close to 12 months, and which accelerated everything into getting all my ideas together and putting the book together. And yeah, so yeah, because it's easy for the day to get away from you, easy.
Do you enjoy those 1 hour? I've got to ask, why? Because I'm in the process of writing my book.
Yeah.
And it's taken I didn't think it was going to take that long. And when I started, I was like, boom, I wrote 10,000 words really quickly. And then it was I was gaining momentum. And then I had this pause, some shit happened in life, right? Had this pause, and then I just left it. And then I keep trying to get back into it. They keep rewriting it because, we learn new things. So it's the stuff you wrote, I feel like I've grown already. So I keep rewriting what I wrote. I keep doing that process. I'm like, but I don't like this now. Now my thinking has shifted. So I keep moving it. I'm like, but my original thoughts should stay there because people would have been at that point, like what I was thinking. But I keep changing it. So now it's been, I don't know, over 2 years now, I think, trying to write.
What you're describing is completely normal, because I went through that as well. It wasn't until somebody helped me categorize my ideas that once I had the category of ideas all done properly and clearly, that I could write to these different topics. So for example, with my emotional fitness work, which Courage to Be You is the emotional fitness formula, the 5 categories are, identity, life stage, values, emotional flexibility, and perspective. So if I was writing about identity, it was just impact hours on identity only. And as soon as my writing started to go over to some other topic elsewhere,
yeah,
I'd either cut it, or if I found that interesting, I'd cut and put that somewhere else for some other future use, and then go back to, because the question I'll be asking myself continually is this relevant to identity? Is this going to help the reader go deeper into understanding how they're defined and all this sort of stuff? So as soon as I actually put a category or categories onto my content, then that gave me sweet momentum. But when I didn't have that and I was just writing Courage to Be You, like yourself, I got lost. I let it go. I dropped it for a while. Yeah. So, but it's worth it. And but I think a dedication toward impact hours of some kind, whether it's an impact hour, even if it's an impact 30 minutes a day on doing something, that's how you build. That's how you build.
That is awesome. So I'm going to introduce that to people and let more know about it. Courage is why courage? Let me know why courage though. Why courage and uncertainty?
Yeah, so the book's called Courage to Be You because I think that's the ultimate courage, is to actually self-discover and get to know you. Because it's like in the book I talk about the fable of the lost car, right? So the fable of the lost car.
What did you say?
In the book, I talk about a fable that I wrote called The Fable of the Lost Car.
Okay.
It's a metaphor with cars. So, so for example, most people aren't aware of what kind of car they're born into, right? So that using car as in place of, personality and everything.
Yeah.
So our psychological construct, our structure, our body type, the way that we think, our personality profile, as much as some might disagree with this, but let me tell you, after 18 years of doing this work and just stuff, you're already made into a certain way, and you need to discover what you're made of. And it's like if you're born as a mini minor and you find yourself on a Grand Prix track, and there's these Formula One cars whizzing around the track at many hundreds of kilometers an hour, and you're trying to compete with that. Because a mini minor doesn't know itself, it's comparing itself to these Formula One cars and doesn't know that it's not a Formula One car. It's a mini minor. And a mini minor doesn't belong there. It belongs in, tight city laneway streets and one-way streets and zipping around the streets of a CBD, of a busy city. And in the book, I speak about how, there's a four-wheel drive that actually finds itself on a Grand Prix track. And it wasn't until a self-aware Grand Prix car pulls over the four-wheel drive and says, hey, do you know that you're a four-wheel drive? Well, what do you mean? What do you mean a four-wheel drive? Because you're a different car to what I am and what these other guys are. You belong in the mountains. You belong in the hills. Let me take you there. I'll show you. And the Grand Prix car takes the four-wheel drive car to the base of this, incredible mountain. And the four-wheel drive just takes off, and with incredible joy, he says, "Oh my God, this is where I belong. This is how I sing. This is how I thrive. This is how I experience joy and my full expression of self." And the four-wheel drive goes on all these different adventures. And one day it's coming back down the mountain, and it finds a Formula One car trying to climb the mountain. And then the four-wheel drive car guides the Formula One car back to the track and has this conversation. There's a whole bit in the book about this. The self-discovery journey is the most important journey of all. Courage to be you is the courage to look within and become self-aware of how you're wired, what naturally energizes you, de-energizes you, what brings you sweet satisfaction, what kind of hobbies should you be doing? Are you a physical person, a creative person, a musical person, a theoretical, philosophical person? Like, what's your makeup? Are you suited to coaching, or are you suited to something else? Should you be working with things instead of working with people? It's self-discovery, and courage to be you is about having the courage to look within, because the word courage, the first four letters, C-O-U-R, is French-Latin blend of heart. It's looking within. It's like Khalil Gibran, the Lebanese poet, said that when you're born, your work was placed in your heart, and your mission is to find it. Right? So this is where you can't manufacture all these different things. You've got to self-discover. So often the way you self-discover is through the tunnels of uncertainty. It's by putting yourself in unfamiliar situations, or in other words, it took me a while to work out that coaching was something that suited me, that doing trainings and presentations was something that suited my skill set. But it took me years, and I believe, and I say this in Courage to Be You in the book, I say that.
Were you a natural presenter, or did you feel like
kind of, but what I was going to say was, I believe that you need to live at least minimum a decade, maybe two, but at least a decade as a full-blown adult to really get to know how you're wired and how you're structured. So that means that most people don't really know themselves thoroughly until they're into their late 30s, early 40s. Hence, that's my take on, life begins at 40. So for me, what happened, Carms, was in 1996, when I was 26 years old, Silvana, my wife, Silvana and I got married, and we had no speeches organized for the wedding. We both agreed that we're just gonna, when it came to our, presentation, that we were just going to thank the people that were there. We had about 250 people at the wedding. We're just going to thank them for coming. It was pretty basic. It's like 1 minute. Silvana will say thank you, and I'll say thank you, and then we'll sit back down. We had a pretty large bridal party of about 16 people or something, and made up of my best friend, Silvana's best friend, and my sister, and a few other people. And I actually had three of my closest friends who are still very close to me today in the bridal party. And what happened was, I got up to say thank you to everyone for coming, and I turned, and I think it was my dad that I saw, and I began thanking my parents for everything they'd given me and all this. And then that became a little talk about my best mate who was sitting next to him. And then I felt obligated to thank everyone else in the bridal party. And the speech went for an hour and a half. It was ridiculous. And at the time, I was working as a rehab counselor at Ford Motor Company, and I had the people I worked with, the physiotherapists, the nurses, the doctors that I was working with, the OTs, they were invited to the wedding, and they had a whole table to themselves. And when the wedding finished, we went off on honeymoon. 2 weeks later, go back to work, back to Ford Motor Company, back to my office, back to the doctors, nurses, OTs, and physios. And the senior doctor there, who I held in high regard, came up to me and he said, "Oh, thank you so much for, inviting us to your wedding." And he said, I will always remember this. He said, "We had no idea. We didn't know that you could do that." And I said, "Do what?" Like I had no idea what he was talking about. Because your speech, we talked about it for days here. Like it was just, it was this, that, and the other. I said, "Oh, thank you so much." Didn't think anything of it. And that was the first little seed that was sown in me that thought, well, maybe that's something that we can work on. And then about 6 months later at Ford Motor Company,
power.
well, something, I don't know. And then at Ford Motor Company, 6 months later, I was asked to deliver this very dry training on OH&S legislation.
Yeah.
and it was very fact driven and dry. And hold on a sec, my battery power is running low. Why isn't that coming on? You have to just bear with me for 1 second. Hold on a sec. Thanks, Carms. I had to turn the power on because I was going to lose you. Sorry, I thought I was plugged into the wall, but I wasn't. So then I did this OH&S presentation thing, and I got some positive feedback from that, and then didn't think anything of it. And then when I went into the real estate space, the company I was in had a high. Their culture was very much based on learning and development, and so we would be asked to pick a book to read and then do a book review on that book and do a little presentation on it. So I did that, and I got good feedback. So I started thinking, well, maybe there's something in this, and yeah, that's how kind of like the curiosity sort of started to get built, and then I learned how to do it professionally, and yeah, that added to my coaching set. So, but circling back to your question, your original question, courage to be you, it's the ultimate courage to find how you're structured, how you're put together, and then to express that fully to the world. That's where the courage really is. So, yeah, courage to be you means being okay to be misunderstood. It's learning how to be loyal to what you stand for and what your values are. And in the book, there's a whole section dedicated to values, because most people do not have clarity at all on what their values actually are.
Yes.
So, and there's a whole thing in the book that in Courage to Be that shows you how to actually discover your values, which is quite different to what a lot of other values based theories have. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but hopefully I have.
What drives you now, Joe? Like what, like the purpose thing? Is it like about discovering yourself more, or what's driving you now?
Two things, I guess. I haven't been asked that question for a long time. Well, one thing that drives me is my spiritual curiosity. So something I've been getting into a fair bit of lately is A Course in Miracles, which to me is a very special text that has been really misunderstood by so many people. This was a book that came out in 1975. It's a book about undoing the grip of the ego and following your higher self, which is very challenging. It's a book that actually demonstrates how you and I are living in a dream that we've created and how to undo ourselves from that dream. So to me, that's the spiritual curiosity.
What's the book called again?
A Course in Miracles.
A Course in Miracles. Okay.
So that's something that drives me, is the curiosity on how to exit without coming back. The other part that drives me is the...
in our evolution, so that we don't reincarnate again. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And the other part that drives me is my book, the Courage to Be You book, is that I think the message in there, it's like the book is doing well, and I've been receiving lots of really genuine, solid, good, great feedback. I value feedback from people who don't know me at all and read the book as a stranger. They're the people I'm interested in what they have to say. I adore, the thousands of coaches that follow me and have bought the book.
Yeah, it's very different, right? Different lens.
Yeah, when a fan reads it, it's like, it's different lens, different flavor. But somebody who is completely unknown to me and me unknown to them reads the book and then comes back with a really solid, good review, that encourages me. And so that's the other thing that drives me, is getting this book out there and getting my message out there and expanding overseas, if all that kind of stuff. So they're the two things that drive me. That's the ambition and the meaning put together for me, how it works. So, and the spiritual work keeps my perspective clean and healthy. And as I say in the book, and also in the Emotional Fitness Formula, perspective is one of the 5 core principles of becoming emotionally fit. Because emotional fitness is about transforming your relationship with uncertainty. That's what it is. It's a preparedness for going through the tunnel of doubt. And perspective is something that we need to build clean and healthy perspectives. because you need a healthy perspective to lean on when things get tough. You know, like when you get caught up in the dramas of life, how many times have people said to you, hey, Calm, just got to get things into perspective. It's like, well, hold on, you can, but if your perspective sucks, then you're not going to really be all that great at doing that. So I find that one thing that really keeps my perspective clean and healthy is a healthy curiosity about spirituality, meaning, you know, undoing the ego grip, really moving away from the ego script and following the script of the higher self, which is a completely different script, which is completely unfamiliar to me. So, and I'm very curious about that. So those are the things that drive me.
What's the best place for people to find you?
They can go to joepane.com.au. I'm not sure when's this coming out, Carms. I'm not sure when you're releasing this.
Probably next month, probably sometime in February.
Okay. Well, because we've just now launched, we only launch this 3 times a year. We've just launched the Emotional Fitness Accreditation. It's called the 2024 Uncertainty Mastery Bootcamp. It actually kicks off this Friday. I don't know if you can get this.
Okay.
Yeah. But if the listeners go to joepane.com.au, if they've missed, because you can register for it there, if they've missed the first live session, there's a little timeline where you can catch the recordings of it. But it's a 3-part series. As I said, it's called the 2024 Uncertainty Mastery Bootcamp, and it's a 3-part series that dives deeper into how to, you know, completely transform your relationship with uncertainty. And there's also an introduction into the accreditation program that I run in emotional fitness. So for coaches, consultants, leaders, trainers who want to become accredited in emotional fitness and use that as a plug-in to their other work, that's an option for people as well. So, but to find all the information on that, they can just go to joepane.com.au. Really, right there on the front page is the link to hop into the actual bootcamp. And as I said, if people are getting this, you know, say on the 8th of February or something, but there's time to go back and watch the recordings and catch up.
Okay, we'll see if we can push this a little bit earlier. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for having me, Carms.